take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
I'm a human being, god damn it! My life has value! It's time to ask yourself what you believe.
Mass murder, torture, perjury, embezzlement, fraud, deception, treason. These are just a few of your many crimes against humanity. You will not win this war, for you are fighting the very essence of humanity.
Alright, welcome to Truth or Talk. I'm April Bowden.
And I'm Virstyne Henry.
Please check out our website at truthertalk.com. And we are interviewing Damian Laster today, which should be interesting.
It's Damian. So I have a friend named Damian, and his name is Damian Laster.
Damian Laster.
Yeah.
And his book is There Is No HIV. So we're excited. Did you read the whole book?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I have it. I have it, and I'm browsing through it, but I haven't finished reading it yet. But I'm excited to have him on, and I'm really excited to get into this topic because it's something we've talked about on our show before, but we've never brought in an expert.
Yeah, I mean, or a person that's had a personal account, because I think that's really important for anybody that's sick to see somebody that's actually been sick, or at least hear about somebody that's been sick. So, because that's the thing that gives human beings hope, Right. I mean, there's a lot of science, and we'll put some stuff in the links to back all of this up. But, we'll put some links. We'll also to some articles and stuff, some medical papers. We'll also put, there are a couple of really good movies, too, that lay this out, and much better than we can. One of them is called House of Numbers. Another one is called AIDS Inc. by Gary Knoll. Gary Knoll is amazing. He does a lot of documentaries about the health industry, or the so-called health industry, the allopathic medical industry, and how they, basically deceive the public into, I'll just say deceive the public. But it's I'm going to send this interview. We've done over 100 episodes now, and I want to send this episode to some of my friends. So if you get this, and if you're actually going to listen, I hope you're listening. And I just want you to know that I love you. I care about you. Because I know I have some friends I've tried to talk to about the information about the HIV, and they basically think I've lost my damn mind. Or they're just like, okay, or they're just like, you don't know, because I've had friends that have died of AIDS, and I'm like, well, I've had friends that have died of AIDS too. It doesn't make, so I think that they think that, I'm kind of delusional, or I've fallen off the wagon, or I don't know. So I know what y'all talk about me. I know what you say. I know.
I mean, it was really hard for me to put my head around at first, too.
Yeah.
I think because I had already gotten into the vaccine issue, I had an open mind to it.
Yeah.
And, but, originally, years ago when I met my friend Liam, Chef, who's also on our network, UCY, and we're extremely close friends. We've been known each other for many years, and when we first met, I was into the vaccine issue. I didn't know anything about the HIV issue at all.
Yeah.
And he found my my blog, and he wanted to. And he used to have a show on Intel Hub, like many.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was. I don't know, however long Liam and I have known each other. And he, I think it's been 5 years. And anyway, so he had this show, and so he found my blog, and he wanted to interview me about vaccines and autism, because he was just starting to get into the vaccine issue. And I went to his, I didn't know who he was, and I went to his website to look at him up, because he'd asked me to be on the show. And at that time, I think I'd done maybe it was like my second or third radio program that I'd been interviewed on. And I was like, oh my God, this HIV thing. Like, I was totally tripping out, because he had done all this really deep investigative journalism. And you can look this up it's called The House That Built AIDS, and he goes into a very extensive research into the this really despicable program where they had been testing these AIDS drugs, which were relabeled cancer drugs, on children in foster care. And it was, and he was living in New York at the time, and I think they were mostly Dominican children. And and I think Damian will talk about that, how, black people are, or with a certain type of melanin pigment, are more likely to get an HIV positive diagnosis. Well, these were people from the Dominican Republic, and for the most part, I think the children were. And they had HIV positive, and they were just being littered with these drugs, and some of them died. Many of them, were really, really ill, and it was really sad. It was a horrible story. I mean, but Liam broke that story, and it I think was really controversial, obviously, at the time when he pulled that out, because it's just despicable and diabolical. And then, of course, he was questioning the whole HIV narrative, which then made everybody all up in arms that they were giving these kids these drugs just to test them, not to actually help them in any way, because the whole thing was a fraud. It was like, wow.
It was experimentation. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but they were using it based on this whole false narrative that there was an HIV to begin with. And then these poor kids coming from the Dominican and maybe, having been malnourished, they were foster children, and then they're diagnosed with HIV, and they start giving them these drugs, and when the kids were too sick to swallow them, they would crush them up and put them into IVs and stick them into their stomach and do all these really awful things. And, so that was my first opening to that. I was reading his website, and you guys can find it at liamshep.com, and it was like, I thought, what is all this stuff? And it was just, it was mind-blowing to me, and I couldn't quite wrap my head around it at first. It took me a while. It wasn't until later that I got to talk to him about it a little more that I actually started to understand it,
Yeah.
And then by the time his book came out, I got into more of the historical, like how this thing got established and all that. But yeah, it was a trip. and I think you mentioned a few, or we were talking about before the show started, some of the documentaries that have come out. There's The House of Numbers, which Liam is in that one, and then Gary Knoll did a film. And did John Rappaport also do a documentary, or he just has done a lot of speaking on it?
I think he's just done a lot of speaking on it. Who else is kind of... you can also go on YouTube, and you can find interviews on Kary Mullis, he was actually a Nobel Prize laureate. And he'll talk about, you can see the interview talking about his experience where he now questions the official narrative of HIV as a person who invented a test to specifically find it and couldn't find it. and right. As a person that was actually working in the industry of AIDS, and he's a Nobel Prize laureate, for God's sake, come on,
Yeah.
And he for chemistry, and he's come out. Peter Duesberg too, scientist, professor at Berkeley. They're doctors and scientists who are questioning the narrative, and they're being suppressed. Because there's a huge industry, just like cancer. This is the thing, just like cancer, just like vaccines, just like autism, all this stuff that, people make money off of. And even, I'm not saying that scientists and people that are working in this industry, the people in the charities, in this industry, that they're maliciously doing it or wittingly doing it. But at the same time, scientists receive their money through funding. That's the only way they get paid. Right. So why are they going to question anything or bite the hand that feeds them? Because they're following this paradigm, they're looking in they're going down the wrong direction for the cure for AIDS, supposedly. And it's just like, God, it's been 30 years. They're not close. How are they not close? How have they not found anything? They haven't cured shit. Now that I think about it.
They haven't.
They're always like, we're really close to a cure. But it's been it's been 3 decades. No, but the drugs are better. We just lowered the dosage. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, you know,
totally.
It's sick. But, you know, there are people that are in the scientific community that are questioning this narrative just by asking simple questions like, we can't see it. How do you know it's there? Oh, you haven't isolated it yet or purified it, because those are the two, what do you call it? Like that's part of the methodology of any type of science when you're discovering a virus or disease or whatever, is you have to isolate it and be able to put it somewhere so it can reproduce somewhere else, and that's how you know if it's able to be transmitted to other people.
Right.
But they haven't done that.
Yeah.
They haven't done that. Plus, you know what? Also, it hit me not too long ago too, when they say, "Oh, you're getting an AIDS antibody test." They're testing for antibodies, but that's what you test for to see that you're immune to a disease, or that you know what I mean, according to their standards, right?
Right.
So when you get, like, I don't know, an MMR test or something, so they test you for measles, mumps, and rubella antibodies to see. You know, they use the titer counts to see how much antibody that your body has produced. And if they can't, you know, and if you show a certain amount of antibodies, that means that you've already had the disease, you're immune, and you're healthy. So for the AIDS test, why are they looking for the antibodies? And I guess for them, they're saying, oh, it's the proteins that they're testing for, if you get more specific. But yeah, it's just very weird, you know, and yeah, and then I think one thing was really interesting that Liam talks about in his book was really cool, about just talking about, like, the openly gay drug culture, and how you know, a lot of people were doing poppers, but and all these other drugs, but they were doing it for, like, I don't know, a decade. You know, straight,
right?
Which just ravages the immune system. And I'm not talking about I've done poppers every once in a while here. No, they were doing like every weekend, like for fucking 10 years, you know, along with other drugs, which is hugely damaging to the immune system. So, you know, you have people that have these ravaged immune systems that are getting it because of their lifestyle, not being gay, but, you know, just saying, like, the drugs that they were doing that were specific to that culture at the time. Yeah. You know, and that's why, you know, it appeared in gay men first. Because they were sick. I'm not saying that they were sick. They weren't sick, but they were sick. But it was because of the things that they were doing, and which was having an effect on their immune system. And I guess poppers also, they mess with the gut flora in the stomach. So, you know, we now know that our immune system, 80% of it is in our gut flora. So if you're basically destroying all of the bacteria and the healthy, you know, the healthy stuff in your stomach that's killing off viruses that get into your body, then, you know, you're not going to be able to fight off disease, and you're going to get sick, and you're going to contract all these other things too. So there were people that were probably also visibly ill before they even receive a diagnosis, you know, but, you know, so anybody too, most of the people that I've known that have been diagnosed with AIDS, the 3 people I know that died, you know, they got their diagnosis first. And after they started taking the drugs, then they started to go downhill. And I know a few people who have already figured out that the drugs make you worse. So they're open to that, but they're not, you know, they still can't wrap their head around that HIV is just not real, because they take it as an insult, saying that people, they're like, what are you saying, my friend didn't die? What are you saying? Like, I saw them die, I saw them get sick. Right. It doesn't mean that they got sick from a virus. That's the thing. And if people are constantly in the paradigm that it's a virus that causes this, then they're never going to find a cure. They're looking for a virus that doesn't exist. That's the thing. Yeah. You know, they're going about it the wrong way. So even the most well-intentioned people that are going, but they're not questioning anything. They're just basically lab technicians. They're doing what they're told, you know?
Yeah, it's true. And, what I was going to say about, just going back to, we were talking before about some of the people who have done documentaries. John Rappaport wrote a book called AIDS Inc.
Oh, that's right.
Gary Knoll made a film called AIDS Inc. John Rappaport wrote a book called AIDS Inc. Scandal of the Century in 1988. That guy wrote that book. So that's he was really pretty ahead of the curve, like being onto this stuff back in the day.
Oh,
so
1988, that just hit me. Dang.
Yeah, so this was pretty new. Yeah. I mean, AIDS was pretty new. It came out, I mean, at first it was considered a gay disease. I forget what they called it originally. And then, but, you know, and again, there was a lot. They knew when it first hit New York City that it was only targeting the gay guys who had been recruited to do the hepatitis B vaccine trials. That was originally what they knew about that, was that the guys who got it actually were the ones that were getting sick, who got the vaccine. And then they were getting, but they weren't being told that they had a vaccine illness. They were being told that they ended up getting labeled with this other thing. But originally they knew that was where it was coming from. So there's been quite a cover-up as well, like of all these things that, other things that were causing people to get AIDS, which is a real sickness, an immune deficiency, acquired immune deficiency. But then they ended up tacking it onto HIV and making it this fraudulent virus. And it's quite simple why that occurs, because you can't really sue a virus because it's a naturally occurring thing. But you can sue industry. You can blame industry. You can blame the pharmaceutical company for giving you vaccines that make you sick. You can, I mean, you could at the time. You can now. They fixed that. They fixed that, but good. But I mean, you can a little bit. You can still kind of, if you go to vaccine court, but it's difficult. But we've talked about that before. But you can sue a pharmaceutical company for certain drugs that make you sick. You can sue. You can try to sue. Agra. I mean, it's all getting even hard to do these things, but basically they're just releasing themselves of liability by coming up with tests. And who are we to question that? You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, obviously we have the right to question it, but we don't have labs. We're not going to be able, taking virus samples and putting them in our kitchen and like trying to cook it up. We don't, nobody, who of us know like how to do that we're going to actually be able to say, this is this is that, this is the other. So on a certain level, we're dependent upon their science, and they're telling us what it is. And so,
but at the same time, you can easily look at their science and see that they lie. They're not. Yeah, I mean, so what, when you look at this information, look at the official story that you're being told, and then look at the information of the scientists and doctors that are being suppressed, and compare and contrast them, and see who makes the most sense. Mm-hmm. Because that's what. So you were saying that we don't have like a lab, an electron like microscope, right, and all these all this fancy equipment, and necessarily even the knowledge to understand all of that on the level. But we are looking at the scientists who do, and who have conflicting information compared to the official narrative, and compared with our own life experiences, our observations, and comparing the official narrative, the scientists who are being suppressed, and our own observation, you can come to a conclusion for yourself. And, the conclusion we came up with, it's a fraud. It's a fraud. And the end, you can also heal yourself, though. That's the beautiful thing about it. It's not like, I think the worst part is thinking about the incompetence of a lot of people, how people just blindly follow without questioning. How many people have died and who could have been saved with this information, people that you love. Right. I think that's the hardest thing to overcome once you really get into this information. But at the same time, if you know somebody that can be helped with this information, if you're sick and if you're sick and you want to heal yourself, you can. So that's the beautiful thing about it. So don't be afraid. Don't be scared.
Yeah.
Don't be scared.
No, I found it really empowering when I found out about this stuff. And it was, and I've had many, many family members that have died of cancer. And, but when I found out, I didn't, I guess, just, and rather than getting upset about that or blocking myself from the information, I just was like, oh, well, you mean you don't have to die from cancer? Oh, you don't have to die from HIV? I mean, learning these things I found really empowering. Learning about the HIV myth was one of the most empowering things I'd heard, because growing up in the 80s, I mean, there was a tremendous amount of fear. And it was actually like there was a witch hunt. I mean, people were considered, you couldn't, they were considering like not letting children with HIV positives go to school with other kids.
I remember that, yeah.
And I think that even happened. I think there was even some kids that were made to like not be able to attend public school because they were so afraid of it. And it was like, but isn't it sexually transmitted? I mean, isn't it, even based on their narrative, it's like, but then you just, if everybody knows, and then you practice safe sex, or if it's a child, I mean, where are they going to be transferring it? But, I mean, they were saying people were getting it from transmissions, people were, from transfusions, rather, sorry.
Dentists. Yeah, but still, like, you're going to go to kindergarten with, like, an IV? Like, come on.
Right. I mean, it was just really, really, really sad. And then the celebrities were all coming out. And,
Rock Hudson, remember that? Rock Hudson?
Yeah, Rock Hudson and Jim Nabors, who was Gomer Pyle. And, then there was, what do you call it? The celebrities who were all coming on the bandwagon of like trying to cure AIDS, and it was like the PC thing because they were like, oh well, it's a gay disease and we're so very accepting of gay people. We want to help them and this and that. That's the kind of attitude I got from it. Like it was just this. I mean that I do now, given that I know that it's a fraud. I don't feel like they obviously they didn't do their homework and discover that it's actually not real, and they went and just were like, oh yeah, we're so PC, aren't we so like liberated that we're going to be helping these people. And there's almost like a, I mean, I don't know, I almost find that like offensive a little bit, like it's sort of looking down on the people that they're trying to help as if that they can't help themselves.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You know who else is a huge advocate or a huge outspoken person about the HIV/AIDS myth is Bjorn Lomborg. He's a huge environmentalist, and he's Danish, and he's very active in I guess the environmental world. I don't know, for lack of a better word, but I found that he was he's been labeled as an AIDS denialist. That's what they call you when you question this stuff. And it's just so bizarre that you can't even question stuff, because I mean, when you're honestly looking for a cure for something, aren't you, shouldn't you be open to new perspectives and new ideas about how to go about it? Why are you just still following the same narrative, especially if it's been like 30 years and you haven't found shit?
Right. Precisely. And then, or it's the same kind of thing. Like they use that propaganda and they call you like a Holocaust denier, and or they just lump you into the category of every kind of conspiracy that's out there if you don't believe in if you're a so-called AIDS denialist, and it's really pathetic, because if you think about it in terms of how empowering it is to know that it's not something that's going to kill you. If you come back with an HIV, that seems to me like that's knowledge I want to have.
Yeah.
I find it really hard to understand why people wouldn't want to know that, or people wouldn't have an open mind to look into that. I can understand where it's difficult to believe when you hear it the first time, but if you kind of you scratch the surface and you go here and there, and you keep scratching at it and you look at it a little bit more and you scratch it a little more and you look at it a little more, you can kind of get closer to believing. I mean, I've had moments like that. I've had a lot of things that have struck me as really too much or too far-fetched when I first heard it, and then but I kept an open mind and I looked at it, and then I decided whether or not I wanted to look any further. Like, okay, I scratched the surface and I'm not really seeing anything. Let me scratch a little more. No, I don't really see anything. I'm going to let that go. And then I just, but then if you start scratching and you see it over and over and over again, then yeah, you could go, hey, this is, this might be true, So, Well, you know what? I think we're going to cut to a short break, and then once we get back, we're going to talk to Damian Laster.
Yeah, Damian Laster. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry. It's my pronunciation problems, but he's going to be up with us next. So y'all please stay with us. We'll be right back.
All right, guys.
Hello. Thanks for having me on your radio. Even though we're not from a famous rock and roll band, if we were, even though we sound a little like we are, we'd definitely wear a Conspiracy Realist t-shirt, because they're gear, aren't they? Oh yeah, they're really gear. I want to write a song about them. Conspiracy Realist t-shirts at truthatease.com. I gotta think of the middle eight. Shop.truthatease.com. What does that mean? It's the internet. What's that? I don't know. It's a net. It's between things. Shop.truthatease.com. What's that? It's where you get Conspiracy Realist t-shirts. Oh, yeah.
Dr. Laster is an author, a spiritual adept, an awakener, teacher, healer, urban shaman, and metaphysician. Damian Laster's educational background after high school includes a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Birmingham-Southern College in 1986, a Master of Special Education in Behavioral Disorders from Georgia State University in 1998, and a Doctor of Metaphysical Science degree from the University of Metaphysics in 2011. Damian Laster is a certified teacher, though not currently teaching in a school setting. He was an educational therapist and a special education teacher for students with so-called behavioral disorders in Atlanta, Georgia. He was also a proud and effective pre-K lead teacher, his most beloved profession to date outside of exposing the truth about HIV. He resides in Birmingham, Alabama. Dr. Laster's scholarly writings include The Rainbow Warrior, Healing HIV through Chakra Awareness, Let HIV Set You Free, The Metaphysics of Self-Healing. His doctoral dissertation was called From HIV to Kundalini Awakening, The Divine Feminine Within. And his latest book, There Is No HIV, The Rainbow Warrior, Exposing the Truth About HIV Antibody Testing and the Metaphysics of Self-Healing Through Chakra and Kundalini Awareness. Dr. Laster's community outreach efforts include working with the Office of Medical and Scientific Justice. You can find more about Damian at consciousdoctor.com. That's consciousdr.com. Please welcome to the show, Damian Laster. Hi, Damian.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, thanks for being with us.
Yeah,
today.
appreciate it. So Damian, tell us about your book. What inspired it? Why did you write it?
Well, I'd like to say, first of all, before even getting into that, I want to thank you, Virstyne and April. Virstyne, you became familiar with my works through Facebook, which I actually call my office. It allows someone like me who does not have access to mass media to reach the greatest amount of people. And from the very beginning, when you discovered my work, you contacted me, you expressed an interest in the whole idea. I could tell that you had some knowledge of it. And then when my book actually came out, you were among the first people to order a copy of it. And that meant so much to me. And all these months later, you kept your word and you said you'd have me on the show. And so thank you, first of all, for that. And April, the fact that you all are friends is just phenomenal, that you've done so many things to expose the truth about so many areas of interest. And I just want to say thank you for that. What brings me here today is, well, I can just tell you a little story,
Yeah.
This weekend, I went home to see about my elderly parents who both are experiencing or beginning to experience health issues. And, I was there at their computer, and there was a ring at the doorbell, and I wondered who that was. I called out. I said, "Someone's at the door," and I looked around in the other part of the house, and my mother was outside, and my dad happened to be back in the bathroom. So I went back to the door, and there was a gentleman standing there. I didn't know who he was. He introduced himself. He said he was there to see my dad. And I went back and told my dad. He said, okay, let him in. So I went back and I let him in, and he introduced himself further and told me he was a friend of my dad's, that they had played golf together. And I said, oh, how nice. So I showed him out to the backyard where my mother was. Eventually my father got there, and they actually sat there and had a more than 2-hour conversation. You know, I looked out through the window, and I could see that they were having what seemed to be interesting conversation. I didn't go out there. But, you know, later when they were, you know, showing him out, my father stopped and talked to me about him, and they, you know, played with the golf course. My dad was about to give him a putter, you know, and all of that. And, you know, I shook his hand again. He went on his way. Well, this morning when I woke up to return back to Birmingham to be ready for the interview this afternoon, I had a wave of emotion that came over me that I couldn't understand. I couldn't explain it. But I lay in bed and I wept. I wept because I recalled all the times that my own family was not there for me after I received an HIV positive diagnosis way back in 1996. All the times when I needed my father the most, he was not there for me. But my mother came along years later, and we're closer than ever now. But to see my father out there talking to this guy that I don't even know, like a son, and having not been there for me, I cried for myself. And I tell that story because I know that there are not only homosexual people out there like me, but people who've received an HIV positive diagnosis and who are living with the lifelong stigma of that, who have been rejected by their families, who have lost their careers, who have found themselves homeless on the street, turning to drugs and all sorts of prostitution or whatever just to survive. I have seen all of that and experienced some of that uphand. I have been an alcoholic and a drug addict, running and searching for love somewhere for people to understand me, even after I learned the truth that HIV was one big old lie. And since that time, I have been attempting to share that message with the world. And, you know, I'll let you all take it from here, but I want to say to the listeners out there that my message today is about self-healing. It is about the simple techniques that you can use, just like I've used throughout the years, to heal myself of any physical bodily illness. I have learned to give thanks for my illnesses, to understand through chakra and Kundalini awareness that any and all disease can be self-healed. So I want to talk about resilience and self-healing here with you all today. Thank you.
Wow. That's a really great place to start because, you know, you mentioned that you're a homosexual male, and did you feel that when at a very young age? Like, how was it growing up?
Well, you know, I feel very blessed to have educated parents who loved us, who went to work every day and set a good example. I knew very early on that I was different. You know, I, all throughout my younger years, knew that there was going to come a time when I was going to have to come out. And that's what I did, you know, and there were consequences for that. I came out earlier than some of my peers that I knew were just like me. You know, for years I even carried a lot of anger about the fact that I was shunned and stigmatized for doing that. And even some of my peers came out later in their lives, and I carried a lot of bitterness about that. Why couldn't you come out with me? Why couldn't you support me when I was demonstrating courage to be myself at a much younger age? Largely after high school, I would say. And so in college, you know, the rumors slipped out, and friends and frat brothers and people turned against me. And, you know, and I'm not here to blame anybody because this is my journey, my story. But I want to be clear so that other people who have gone through their own story can see themselves perhaps in me One of the reasons that I wrote the book, so young, black, homosexual men can see themselves in me and realize that they can transcend this crisis just like I did.
You know,
so that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
No, that pretty much is it. I do want this to be more of a conversation than me, going on and on about it. So that is what it was like. I mean, I had girlfriends. I loved girls and women. In fact, I got along better with women and still to this day do. But I knew that there was something different about me. I couldn't understand it. There was a lot of pain and anguish trying to accept and acknowledge it and learn more about it. And that's what I did. I set about learning to love myself. I didn't always do that because I was raised Roman Catholic. I had a pretty healthy dose of, shame and guilt over sex and sexuality.
Yeah.
As well, the Bible seemed to support that, people like me were considered abominations. So I took a lot of that on, in my earlier years.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're being open about this because I have friends and family members that I love like to death and who are gay, and I see a lot of them going through the same thing that you, or kind of having some of the same struggles that you just talked about now. And I think it's also important too for people that are listening, if they have a sibling or any other family member or friend that has come out and they want to get some insight into how they're feeling, this would be helpful for them also and what they're going through, because society is so brainwashed about about a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I mean, like with you talked about that too in your book about like homosexuality and how people are just trained to just shun people who are gay, look down on them, kick them aside. And even to the point, like if you have like somebody in your family that you love, that you love, and people, they find that you're gay, they'll just turn against you and just throw everything else about you like out the window, which is just so bizarre, because that's what they've been like trained to do, and not kind of like think for themselves and be like, well, this person is a good person, they've never done anything to me. Oh, but the Bible says he's gay, so I can't like associate with them.
Exactly, Virstyne.
When they weren't even religious in the first place, but then they like to pull out the Bible.
Yeah, but it's just a justification for putting down what you don't really understand and what you've been miseducated about. But, so much has happened in the years. The media is changing. People are growing by leaps and bounds in awareness, and times are changing. And that is the good part, that people are beginning to think for themselves, think critically about issues, and begin to love outside of the confines of what they were taught. So we're all evolving.
What I find interesting too, I guess April and I first, as far as I know, I'll just speak for myself. As far as I know, I really came into the into awareness about the HIV myth when our mutual friend, who's an investigative journalist and author, wrote a book called Official Stories, and in where he talks about different different situations and where we've been lied to as a public in the book. And one of the chapters called The Scarlet Letter, which I think it's really appropriately named, talks about the HIV myth. And that's when I read it. I read that chapter, and then from his book, I went on and I did research on my own. And it was really, devastating to me, and especially since I've had 3 people that I personally know that have died of AIDS. And I've saw them like deteriorate, and it was just like, I think also too, not even like being a gay person, but just having the fear of sex, not being able to be fully self-expressed through sex, even as a straight woman, thinking that, that's the worst possible thing that can happen to you. And if you get that, then there's like no turning back. There's no cure. There's no turning back. Not only are you, going to be physically ill, but you're going to be basically an outcast of society and your family and
Right.
loneliness.
Right.
And I think that this is one of the things, too, that the people that have been conspirators in this lie are counting on. They're counting on the fact that people are
Yes.
are
Virstyne, exactly.
self-loathing, so they'll accept their diagnosis and not really even be open to think critically or look outside the allopathic medical industry for questions. So it's interesting too. Could you tell us a little bit about the history, or not the history, or just kind of like what it was like being gay and how people that are gay can carry around this guilt that would make it more likely for them to accept their diagnosis and just kind of be, paralyzed by fear and allow themselves to be destroyed by the fear and the drugs that they're taking.
Okay, what age are you, please?
You're going to make me tell my age on air? Okay, I'm 37. God, I should be like, a woman never tells her age. I'm 37.
Okay, are you, 37, okay. So,
don't tell anybody.
I won't
between us.
You look great, and you're very bright, even for that age. So, I asked that question because I am aware that many people were born into this false paradigm. So, their entire lives have been based around the fear of this deadly, so-called sexually transmitted disease. And so it is difficult for those people to perhaps believe that they have been miseducated, they have been lied to, bamboozled, hoodwinked, essentially. And so even though I was in high school, just about to go off to college to be a young man in the world, we heard about this crisis. I believe it was my sophomore year in college. And so while I was about to come out and be free, being away from my parents, being away from people I went to high school and grew up with, I was about to get free, and yet here was the news of this devastating so-called disease that gay people were getting, and it caused almost like the fragmenting of my soul is the best way I can describe it. And I want to interject here that the book is not just about HIV, it's about a lot of things, and anybody who has experienced disease or illness can use the book as a tool to self-heal. But going back to the topic, it was devastating. I, at that time, was not mature enough to realize that what comes on television might not always be the truth. What I hear in church from the pastor's pulpit might not be the truth. What's in the Bible might not be the whole truth. But at my school, I learned in a philosophy class, Dr. Frankie, about critical thinking and analysis. And it just so happened that all those years later, I had to draw on those strengths and skills to educate myself about the issue beyond what I was hearing on television or from people as I watched my friends and associates die. It's interesting that you say you've had friends that died of AIDS. Well, I will correct you on that. I would say you have had friends, just like I have, and everybody on this planet, who were murdered with fear and toxic drugs that literally block the synthesis of DNA at the mitochondrial powerhouse energy center of the cell and debilitate and kill people. And that process, which I describe in my book, as well as in all of my videos, I hope people will go on Google and go to YouTube and search my name, Damian Laster, for my YouTube channel and see some of my work there. Go to my website, ConsciousDoctor.com, and see my story. It's all there. I've spent thousands bringing this story to people so that they don't have to endure, that they can see the tragedy and the opportunity to grow spiritually. I may have gotten a little bit off topic, but I want to say that, not off topic, but I've gone, off a little bit, and I want to bring it back to say that it was a devastating time. When I'm about to enter the world, and it just pushed me back into the closet.
Wow.
And I hope that no young person has to go through that, through learning about self-love and the importance of realizing that we are not victims of anything. We are creators of our own world, and we don't have to buy into things that other people tell us. We can look into things on our own and discern truth from illusion.
Yeah, and I want to just make a statement too that it doesn't only apply to people that are gay. It applies to anybody. This is one of the things I found reading the book too, that I saw how it applied to me, a lot. And you were talking about like the pills, because I had a friend that had a roommate who was diagnosed with HIV, right? He was quote unquote HIV, right? So as we know, and he literally took like 20 pills a day and another 20 different pills to counteract the side effects. And I'm just curious, because we do a lot of shows. We've done shows on antidepressants, and we do a lot of shows on vaccines research, and this is how our awakening was really through that. And tell me about the side effects of the drug. I think it's pronounced Epivir, E-P-I-V-I-R.
Epivir.
And the Xerox, and N-A-Z-T.
Yeah.
And how did you find out that they serve no purpose?
When you read my bio, you read that I used to be a special education teacher for so-called behavior disorder students. I actually resigned from that position because it had gotten to the point where teachers were required to hand deliver the drugs on schedule to the children who was prescribed Ritalin and other psychotropic drugs that I could clearly see that was negatively impacting my own children. And I was teaching when I got that diagnosis. So I already knew, working in the psychiatric milieu, that psychotropic drugs were harmful.
Yeah.
So when I received the diagnosis, and I call them, my little encapsulated reminders of my appointment with death, they were my new best friends. They were going to save my life. And I began taking 2 in the morning and 2 at night when I got up and when I went to sleep. And I later realized, 6 months later, when my fingers and toes were getting numbness in them, or for instance, when I would be lying in bed and sit up and I would jerk all the way up. Or as a teacher, when I was reaching for something on a desk, my hand was jerking all the way out to the object. And you get the heebie-jeebies. It was like, oh my God, what is happening here? And then you go back to the doctor once a month to re-up on your prescription, your next, bottles of it. And he couldn't really explain anything about the drug. He would just give you a piece of paper that had a lot of scientific, technical information on it that was, quite literally confusing. But when I began to experience numbness in my fingers and toes, I was like, oh my God, what is that? It must be HIV coming on. So you go into a deeper level of fear and agitation and worry. But when I began to look into it on my own, and I learned the players who were involved in the bringing of HIV to mass awareness, what their character was like, and I looked into the drugs themselves and realized that something wasn't right, my intuition, because I had experienced a Kundalini awakening one day of meditation, after which my life changed, and it's still changing daily. I knew that I needed to stop taking those medications, and that's exactly what I did. And I never looked back. I never went back to the doctor. I never trusted them anymore. I knew. Now, I grew into the awareness of self-love, and I knew that something was wrong with what they were telling us about HIV. And then I went on a search, and I found the science to back up why it was a lie. And, we can go into a little bit of that, April and Virstyne, if you want to. But what I like to do, because people contact me all the time from all parts of the world, and they are desperate to know how to handle this crisis because it has become a part of their own lives or someone they love. And they are either afraid to stop taking the drugs or afraid to start taking the drugs, or they are in crisis because when they started taking the drugs, they started experiencing the debilitating effects of those drugs. And those effects are, in men, gynecomastia. Now imagine a man growing breasts, what that's like. Gynecomastia, numbness in the fingers and toes, which is called peripheral neuropathy. You know, I had friends, I would go visit them, and they'd be sitting up on their couch watching TV with big leg pumps around each of their legs, and it's buzzing, you know, because it's increasing the circulation that is being cut off. And then if you go to Atlanta today and just ride down Peachtree Street, you'll probably see several guys, usually black guys, you know, they're walking to the train or walking to the bus stop, and they're walking, you know, what we call abnormal gait. It really affects the neuromuscular system in a horrible way. But the mentality of the people who are going through that, they think it's HIV coming on. But what it is the detrimental effects of those drugs. And I want to add here that there are people who claim that those drugs are helping them, and that pisses me off, quite frankly. I do believe that throughout the years, the drugs are, the detrimental effects have been lessened, so they can continue to make money, I believe. But I also am aware of the placebo effect. You know, if you think you're ill and all of a sudden you've got a drug and you think it's going to make you better, you take it and your body naturally follows along with that for a while. And, you know, I'm sure some of your readers are familiar with Dr. Banks, Dr. Nancy Turner Banks, who is a black woman and a Harvard Medical School graduate. She's written a book called AIDS, Opium, Diamonds, and Empire, the Deadly Virus of International Greed. You know, all of them verify these things. So I also wanted to get in here, and I don't know where you all would put this, but I wanted to call attention to the black scholars who have been bringing this message to the world through means that they have. I feel, quite honestly, that I'm among the first people to figure this thing out in 1998. And then around 2005 and onward to now, a lot of books are coming out about it. But I have been literally screaming this from the rafters. Prior to joining Facebook, I was in so-called spiritual internet groups, and I was really pushing this information and this agenda. And it's just so nice to see that all these years later, you know, I wrote my first book in 98, started it, and finished it in 2001. It didn't get published in 2007 because nobody wanted to hear this kind of information back then. So things are getting better. There is progress being made, and I feel like I have been waiting on the world to catch up so that we can end this crisis and that people's lives could not continue to be destroyed. We can talk about what's going on all over the world. There's an entire chapter in my book called HIV Stigma and Lack of Social Support. It is a scholarly presentation about that problem all over the world, and the research bears out that darker-skinned, more melanated people are more likely to be diagnosed HIV positive, and all that goes along with that. Yeah. You know, throughout the book, even though I don't dwell on it, I don't point fingers necessarily, but we really have to begin to ask the tough questions. What is this hoax all about? What is this sinister agenda that people are in fear, like you said, Virstyne, of sex and intimacy, the most powerful healing energies available to us on this planet? Why are they trying to sublimate our Kundalini energy to the lower chakras? Why are we not able to enjoy our bodies, healing and sex and intimacy, and rise through the chakra column, through the heart of unconditional love, to the higher centers of awareness in the throat, third eye, and crown? I believe that's what it's about, sublimating those energies. I also want to posit that perhaps if we exhumed the bodies of all the people who've been slain throughout the years, what will we see? What will we find? Will we find missing internal organs? There are some scholars who believe that black people or melanin people are more susceptible to attack so that their internal organs can be used to make products for less melanin people. That's a lot, you know, to be stepping out there and saying, but it is possible, and I believe there's evidence to bear it out. And I just wanted to get that on record. Also, we have to figure out what is the difference between HIV and AIDS. Well, I hate when people juxtapose those two. But they're only doing it because that's the way we've been taught. That HIV leads to AIDS. It's the precursor to AIDS. But HIV is totally separate. It is something that by the classical methods of virology has never bared out or been proved to exist. It has never been isolated properly. But yet it was rushed to the public. As well, AIDS, many scholars are saying, it's a matter of wording and lexicon, where what was going on in Africa since colonization, malnutrition, poverty, starvation, malaria, dysentery, all of that has been lumped in, and then AIDS has been thrown in there with it. Now, that doesn't say that perhaps even more sinister agenda may be going on there, because it could be bio-warfare or whatever.
Yeah.
But one thing is certain, that there's so much information out there that causes such confusion. Or did it come from apes? Like sending black people to apes. Who knows? But I want to talk about the simple things that help people who are in crisis. And the things that have helped me is not to get bogged down in all the scientific mumbo-jumbo words that scientists have come up who receive, millions of dollars in AIDS to so-called study this thing, T cells, viral load, all these, I call it HIV speak. There's also a section in the book about that, which can bog a confused, helpless person down in unnecessary scientific mumbo-jumbo.
It throws you in there in fear, Yeah.
All you really need to know is that it's never been proved to exist, and that any physical symptoms that you're experiencing, you created those symptoms through your own ill state of consciousness. And the way to begin learning about that is to learn about the chakras. I feel so grateful that Carolyn Neese, came along, and Louise Hay,
Oh, well, I was going to...
Carolyn Arua Shola. I love those people. They helped me save my own life.
I wanted to ask you about Louise Hay, because in the pre-interview we were talking about Louise Hay, and you were saying that she influenced your work, and I said, I'm going to ask you about it, because I know a little bit about Louise Hay. I bought her book, and I actually ended up giving it to somebody else, because I just have this habit of buying books, and then I don't read them right away, so if somebody was really, really interested in the book, I'll give it.
I give them as Christmas gifts.
Yeah.
It is the best resource to have to understand the consciousness side of creating and healing illness. And once I put all that together, that the little, the rash that I may have had, or the swollen lymph gland under my armpit, or the, whatever, I could go to that book, which has a list of disease with self, from A to Z, and I could find what I was experiencing. And then she relates it to the consciousness that I was in, what's going on in my life, in my relationships, with my family, on the job, wherever I am, and what's really going on. And can I heal that, which is the underlying cause of the physical symptom that has nothing to do with something never proved to exist, HIV? And then I could look at myself and my own world and my own life, and then I could choose to become the Christ in my own life. Yeah. I don't have to look outside for Jesus or some Savior to swoop down and save me, because in the ancient Kemetic teaching, we teach knowledge of self.
Yeah. Yeah, and so many people are disconnected.
Power to heal is within. Yeah, yes. And we've been miseducated so that we're not connected. But I arrived at those conclusions, and it's not rocket science. It's simple, Hey, there's no such thing as HIV. I don't have to believe that I'm an abomination. There's nothing wrong with me. I love myself. If I get a little physical illness or something, I can heal it. I may have to learn to forgive. I may have to let go of something that happened in the past or childhood, forgive my father or whatever, my girlfriend or my husband, and that I was married to 4 or 5 years ago. Because we know for a fact that metaphysics and consciousness and disease creation proceeds from the etheric body into the physical body. based on our levels of consciousness. And that, to me, is the wave of the future, teaching people that they have that ability, because the body is a God technology. We just need to line up with this desire to be healthy. And if we get sick, it is because it is a gift to us from the Most High, saying, hey, it's a wake-up call. Take a look at yourself. Take a look at your life. Take a look at the way you're reacting and acting in work. Are you balanced, or are you out of balance?
Yeah, it's funny because
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just saying, when you were talking about illness being a wake-up call, I had a friend that actually cured herself from cancer, and she said that cancer was the best thing that ever happened to her. I was like, what?
Yes.
How do you, what? What do you mean?
Yes.
That was just
that's the thing about it.
I didn't think it was crazy, but I thought that was a crazy statement. Like, how can you say
Oh, no.
Now I get it. Now I get
that
it.
person has definitely grown, spiritually speaking, because cancer, according to Louise Hay, and other, scientific research is being done now on consciousness. There are instruments that actually measure our emotions and all of that, stress levels, etc. There's photography, Kirlian photography, that can take pictures of the aura and show where dark areas or blockages are in the body. But the idea that people who get cancer have been in a consciousness of long-standing resentment and inability to forgive and let go of the past. They carry that weight around all their lives, and then all of a sudden they are told that they have cancer. But the beauty is, when you understand the human body chakras, the root, sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, and crown chakra, and generally speaking, the organs around the location of that chakra generally govern it. And when you read Carolyn Meese's book, The Anatomy of the Spirit, she teaches principles. That's what my bio says. I teach the principles of self-healing. Every chakra has a principle. For instance, if in the solar plexus, which is the stomach area, you feel your body rumbling, and you don't really know why. You get sick, you run to the store and get some Pepto-Bismol, or you stay out from work because your stomach hurts. Or you go to the doctor and pay him hundreds of dollars, rather. But if you know that the stomach symbolically represents the ability to digest ideas, consciousness, and then you take a look at your own life, and maybe something's going on at work where you're scared you might get fired. Or maybe you think your husband is cheating on you. You get worried and fearful about that. Or whatever situation is going on in your life, you can take a look at that. And the principle of the third chakra, the solar plexus chakra, is to respect yourself. And if you are not respecting yourself in whatever situation that is, for instance, you're giving all your power away to your husband who you think is cheating, or you're giving it all away to your boss who you feel like is being mean to you, and you're not speaking up for yourself and taking back your power, you're going to be ill. Yeah. So the rumbling and the fear and all of that is a wake-up call to you, that you have power within yourself to regain your control. Not control, but regain your health, to rebalance your energy. And you can do that with every body organ there is. If you know the spiritual symbolic significance of it, if it's ill, you can relate it to the chakra, observe that principle, and take a look at your own life and heal yourself.
Yeah, and this is one thing too.
That's so powerful.
And this is one thing I feel that the establishment does not want us to be able to do, because once we have knowledge over how we work and how to heal ourselves, then we'll be less dependent on them. We won't be dependent on them at all.
They can't pay for their second homes and children's Ivy League and vacations all over the world. So if we're not coming back to them, I don't think they. I won't say that they
What's the whole system?
They are not trained in chakra.
No, I don't think that they're intentionally, maliciously doing this, but it's the whole system. It's the way the system is set up. And we talk. All right, so Damian, I have a question. I have lots of questions. What is the root chakra, and is it the key to our sexuality? And can disruption of the energy to the root chakra make us insane or possessed or depressed or give us other negative effects?
Well, first of all, just to understand that the human body chakra system is how the world of spirit is manifest in the physical plane. And in a sense, it's the story of the gods in us. When we think about the story of Zeus and Prometheus, Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to humans, and as a retaliation, Zeus had him chained to a rock and the vultures ate of his flesh. Well, within us are the gods, and the root chakra is the bottom of the spine, positioned in that area. And it signals our arrival into the physical body to experience life in the earth plane. It represents our connection to our tribe, our family, the basic needs of survival in life. And when there are disturbances in the root chakra or any chakra, we are going to experience physical manifestations of illness. And really, you can just imagine the organs that are in that area. For instance, if you're having a bowel issue or a lower intestine issue, then that's where it would manifest. But again, all you have to do is take a look at your own life. The principle of the root chakra is all is one. All is one. And with that awareness that we are all from the source of God, no matter our skin color or any of that, we're all reflections of source. And in your own life, if you're not living in that consciousness, you're probably going to experience some illnesses in the root chakra as a result of the imbalance of energy being distributed through that center.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because it can go anywhere. You're talking about specifically about the root chakra, but then there's several. How many chakras are there again, exactly?
There are hundreds of chakras in the body and the planet and all throughout the cosmos. However, for most purposes, people talk about the 7 major ones.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the root, the sacral, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. And Virstyne, I believe it was, who asked about sex. Well, while the chakras are all integrated, for purposes here, we're simplifying. The sacral chakra would be the one associated with the sex organs because it's positioned right in that area. Sacral, sacred dwelling place, chakra. And so that will be the next one. I don't know if you want to discuss that now or not.
Well, no, I was just finding this interesting because I didn't really know about this until recently. And when I started reading about the chakras, I realized I had a lot of blocks within my throat chakra, which was interesting to me because I had, as a kid, I used to get chronic sore throats all the time. Like if I was getting a sickness, it was always my first area that I would notice, and it was always the last to heal. So it was the hardest for me to get through. So I really believe what you're saying, but I hadn't, it was something I just wasn't aware of until recently. So I find it interesting that you're using this knowledge and you're sharing with people about how to
Oh, yeah.
to heal.
It is so fascinating. Hey, I used to slip in knowledge of the chakras when I was teaching 4- and 5-year-olds. I had my behavioral management system designed around the principles of the chakras. If I see little Johnny forgiving his friend for poking his eye, I call attention to it. Hey, guys, look, Johnny's forgiving Matthew for poking him in the eye. He gets the green ball. And I give him the little green piece of construction paper with the Velcro on the back, and he'd go up to the body tracing on the wall. Where there was a body tracing that was kid size and had all the little chakra points in their colors, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and black, and he'd stick it on the heart. I said, isn't that great? He forgave his friend, even though his friend was wanting to hurt him in that moment. But they're friends again. And the children would go, yeah, So they were learning about the chakras without even knowing. But you spoke of the throat chakra.
Yeah.
So when they decorate the Christmas tree, that's what it's symbolic of. All those colors, those are the chakras. And with the star at the top, when that energy rises to the crown, and it's illumination, when you see that halo around the character Jesus' head, it indicates the illumination, that the energy has risen to the crown chakra, and symbolizes oneness with the Creator. But the throat chakra has a principle to surrender personal will to divine will. It is the center of expression where we voice our opinions or our thoughts about things. And for instance, an interesting story on that is when the then Department of Secretary of Health, Margaret Heckler, was announcing to the world about HIV with Robert Heckler standing right next to her. She could hardly get it out. She was, and I thought to myself, go get that book, even though I already knew. I went and got Louis Haig's book. I looked up laryngitis, and it said an inability to speak up to authority. You know, I don't know for certain, but imagine the pressure she must have been under in charge of the health of the people in this country. And she knows, perhaps, that there's no definite proof that what they're about to announce to the world. And she could hardly get it out. But I submit to you that if you were to look at your own life, and you know, all these things aren't cut and dry in stone, but they are tools that you could use to evaluate your own life. You know, you could just take a look at your own life in the privacy of your own meditation time and say, hey, who is it in my world that I'm having a hard time speaking my truth to?
And it's true, and at the end of the day, it's about people really figuring things out for themselves and what works for them and their issues. There's no one-size-fits-all, and that's one of the major flaws in the medical industry. It's like everybody, you know, it's designed now. It wasn't that way, but, you know, until the Rockefellers came and, you know, we created a schism, and you know, now it's become this one-size-fits-all situation where that's not true, you know, and it doesn't work, it doesn't heal, you know. I'm a little curious.
When you go to the doctor, what generally happens is they listen to your symptoms, and then they write on a pad what those symptoms are, and they come with prescriptions and therapies to those symptoms. They rarely talk to you about
which create more symptoms after you take them, right?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what you were saying.
I was saying they come back with the pad of you know, with the prescription to address the symptoms, and I said which creates more symptoms, basically. Yeah. You know, it's like,
you know, I weep because my friends that I thought I would grow old with, who, you know, essentially were murdered. They were, you know, seeing a psychiatrist because they were depressed or suicidal. They were alcoholics because they were drinking themselves to death, trying to understand, figure out how to get through this crisis. And they were going to the doctors for their physical symptoms, and they would have all these pills on the desk. And they would just, I don't understand how anybody can think that doing that wouldn't devastate the body's natural balance. You know what I mean? Yeah. But that's the way people have been conditioned to believe. And every one of those prescriptions, somebody's getting paid for that. Somebody's getting kickbacks for that.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that doctors do that is just accepted practice, and it's got to stop.
Wow, yeah.
And the only way it'll stop is by people becoming educated and saying no.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and that's the thing. We deify doctors. We give our power, or not only doctors, but the whole scientific, you know, establishment, and we give our power away to them. And it's become this religion where, you know, some people might not want to hear that, and I'm not saying the methodology of science is ineffective and irrelevant, but the whole, what science has become, you know, people even use the words like, I don't believe in, you know, I believe in medication, I don't believe in alternative, you know, I believe in science, you know, you can see it in the way.
That's what has made it so hard for people like me, because we've come to this awareness through our own personal illnesses. And yet, the system as it is won't even allow us to make a living sharing what we know. You know, because the system that is in place is so staunch, and that people, in effect, have been dumbed down to not even know the power that they have to heal themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it presents a threat to the establishment, which what some people call the AIDS religion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. That's how it's preferred. And so, like I said, I just think that the more educated people become to the fact that there are other sides to every issue, and that they, particularly through their own computers, if they're discerning, can and everybody's doing that now. I think they're looking into things more on their own.
And talking to people too. I mean, that's a huge part of it.
Talking to other people.
I think why you get demonized too is like you are a living testament that you can have a quote unquote HIV diagnosis, but or like kill yourself or not even, succumb to illness or death. And that's really, I think that actually is more of effective on people than any scientific paper or document that can ever, be produced. And that's what really changes people's minds. And that's what really, because, when they were getting people scared about AIDS, they were showing pictures of people that were emaciated and had sarcoma scars and stuff. They weren't like, here, read this. They weren't putting the scientific papers on TV and showing people, to read that. They were showing images and pictures and stuff like that.
And
that's
then little cells under a microscope with a person standing there in a white coat and an arrow.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that's HIV.
Yeah.
Terrifying the mass public.
Yeah.
I was one of them.
Yeah.
I was one of those people.
For sure, and that's how they do. So I think I hope people also start to realize that. And like I said, I love science. April and I both love science. We're not saying it's irrelevant, but and they also like to dismiss anybody that has a personal story of healing as anecdotal evidence.
And
but it's a hypocrisy because that's what they use to get people to their lives.
You'd be surprised the level of really seems like hatred that I get from people.
Yeah.
Mostly from the people that I want most to help, to help themselves.
Yeah.
People question me and my credentials, and I can end every argument. I said, well, if HIV is the truth, how do you explain that I stopped taking my drugs after 1 year, 18 years ago, and never looked back? What is it about me that's so special that, I can defy HIV?
Yeah.
Yes, you can tell me everything you've seen on television, everything you've read in a magazine, but you can't prove any of it. It's all propaganda. You can't find me the science because it has clearly been shown, although it doesn't make mass media, by Dr. Papadopoulos. I think that's how you say her name.
Eleni Papadopoulos,
Eleni Papadopoulos, and
the Perth group,
Henry Bauer, Dr. It's just so
Peter Duesberg and Carrie Mullis.
Peter Duesberg, all of these people, Celia Farber, Christine Mitchell, all of these wonderful people who have been trying to bring this message to the world. You don't hear much about that. The science, the real science. But people are passing off science, which is only propaganda.
Yeah, for
and, it's so frustrating that I'm sitting here the living proof, and I'm telling you that HIV is a lie. You don't have to buy into that. But you know what? A lot of people, because of the miseducation about sex, they have such fear and guilt and shame about it that maybe they slept with 2 people in a week, and then all of a sudden they take on the idea that they may be a whore.
Yeah.
And you go around like that every time you sleep with somebody, and you feel guilty and bad, but you don't realize you're affecting your own immune system, you're affecting your own consciousness, you're affecting your own body. And so when they get a symptom, they get all afraid, they run to the doctor, they take an HIV test, and that test is another thing we really need to start looking at. What is it that they're looking for? And I'm going to jump to Crystal Mayer, I think it's Mayer or Meyer.
Mm-hmm.
She's a microbiologist. She's saying just what I said earlier, that those tests look for DNA expression is the word she uses, of something in the immune system. And whatever that is, it is most often found in black people. And that's why black people test positive for HIV more often than others. Not because they're promiscuous or having any sex more than anybody else, not because the men or whatever. All the horrible things that are said about our people are not true. But they use people like Magic Johnson and some of these waning celebrities that just want their face in front of the camera or to see themselves on an ad, who don't understand the crisis, who are not personally going through it, who are getting paid to keep this lie going. And it is so disconcerting for somebody like me and others like me who are out there trying to help people wake up to the parts of this whole hoax.
I just want to ask you, we're pretty much almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you, because I think a lot of people might be listening to this and they'll be like, oh, chakras, that's just frou-frou, and there are a lot of people in the so-called truth movement who, who demonize the stuff like chakras because they see it as part of like the New Age movement. And I'm just curious, what do you think about the demonization of the New Age movement? And do you think in some instances it causes people to become apathetic, self-centered, and materialistic? Or what are your thoughts on that? Because I know there's some people that might be listening. They might
I just say this, that I was part of the New Age movement. All of us are who are waking up. And then we're learning to discern as we go along.
Yeah.
We learn that a lot of things we're learning might not be true. But what I do know, if it's not written in the stone, if it didn't come from ancient Africa, from Kemet, from my ancestors, my ancestors, it's probably not the truth. And you can go and study the Temple of Luxor. Lux meaning light, and it is was a tool that you could literally step in and vibrate yourself to higher awareness. In the walls of the hieroglyphs tells the story of the chakras. Now, while you may not be able to conceptualize the whole thing and say to yourself that it is true, I can tell you right now that what I'm sharing with you is replete throughout history, throughout literature, even symbolism in the Bible. The lighting the 7 lamps, the burning bush, the light in the head is the pineal gland. There's so much symbolism and things in these literary texts that point to chakras and Kundalini, and I would say delve into that. Don't allow me to tell you. Don't allow your pastor, your wife, or anyone. Look into things for yourself and let your spirit guide you to the truth.
Oh, could have been
That's
so
what
better.
I'm wishing for people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. So where can we get your wonderful book and any more of your works and learn more about you and connect with you? Please let our audience members know.
Thank you. I am available to travel anywhere on this planet. This is what I do. It's what I love. I have people who contact me who have experienced a complete turnaround just in becoming aware of the other side of the issue. Just the other day, a guy was thanking me for all the things he's learned. He stopped taking his drugs, which he said made him feel like the life force was being drained out of him. You see people with a caved-in face or caved-in body look. They don't exude any sexual energy, any life force energy, because those drugs are harming them.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is direct your attention to the website, consciousdoctor.com. I not only tell my story, I provide the resources, the documentaries. I call it a one-stop shop for all things HIV percent. We will be expanding this year. We're going to have subscribers and other areas, maybe blogging so people can interact with each other. All of those are in the making. But take a look on YouTube at my channel. I've got several videos. One is the first part of the book. There is no HIV. I've got 2 versions of it. One has study-type music, house music that's popular among homosexual culture. But it's 190-something slides with all the sciences there in a fast tempo. And the other one, by contrast, it's the same presentation, but the music is slow and haunting. Sort of reminds you of Schindler's List, that music that was haunting. It's kind of like that, so you can really, people say, oh, I love the music. That's the music on the website. So, oh, I love the music. Where did you get that? And I thank the guy that's helped me, the graphic designer. Every video that I've done has metaphysics in it, sacred geometry in it, something for the spiritually intermediate level person or the adept instantly recognize. So things that affect you on a subliminal level and that heal your body and your spirit and your soul. So
it's a consciousdr.com. So it's not the whole word doctor.
Consciousdr.com.
Yeah.
On that, you'll find all the videos and the interviews. You'll see one is called the HIV/AIDS Trap. The slow version, I left everything on the screen long enough for a person to sit there and read the entire board. On the fast version, you can either pause it or keep it moving, but I gave you two options on that. And then the second half of the book, the Metaphysics of Self-Healing through Chakra and Kundalini Awareness, I created another video for that. And it teaches all about the Temple of Luxor, all about the chakras, all about their principles, all about the organs of the body and their spiritual symbolic significance, all set to a beautiful beat that keeps you interested and entertained from the beginning to the end. So I covered all of that. And the interview that I did on Living in Black Radio in 2011 broke that into two parts. One is about chakras and Kundalini. The other is where the audience members got to call in and ask questions about health. So that's out there. And then the Divine Mother Come In video. Please take a look at that.
Thank you, Damian. Yeah, that's great.
Look at the history of the Divine Mother. The Divine Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Not leaving the Divine Mother out. She birthed creation. You too are representatives of her. And that is what is happening at this time, the reawakening of the Divine Feminine in the consciousness of humanity. All of that's in the book. I hope that you'll all take a look at the website and buy book and share it with others. And don't be afraid to carry it because if there is no HIV, nobody's going to think you have HIV if they see you carrying that book. No, you explain it to them. Yeah. You know what I mean? People don't want to be seen walking around with that book. Well, I didn't want to sugarcoat. The first book I wrote, and I'll be done shortly, the first book was The Rainbow Warrior, and the guy that helped me publish it, Healing HIV. And I was like, I want to take HIV out of it because I don't believe in HIV. Why would I put Healing HIV when it doesn't exist? There was a proof it exists. So that's why I was so adamant in this book, there is no HIV.
Yeah.
That's the simple truth.
Yeah.
We've all bought into a lie, and we don't have to do that anymore. And I'm the living proof, and thousands of other people are around the world who might not have courage to speak up and tell the story.
I'm going to cut you out because we're out of time right now. But
we really appreciate it. You've done a great job. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
you are so welcome. I'm sorry that I ran a little long. I just had so much to say, and I wanted to get it all in. But thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
And before you put anything out there, please let me hear it.
Absolutely.
So we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back. Thanks, Damian.
Oh, thank you.
Everything I'm looking at seems crazy. The newspaper, the television, nothing's right. Nothing's telling me what's true. It's like I fell into a bucket of cream and kicked my legs until I became a mouse. What's that about? I'm a conspiracy realist, not a conspiracy theorist. I want a t-shirt that represents me. What? There's one that's available? Go to shop.truthatease.com, says the voice in my head. Shop.truthatease.com. It's not crazy. I'm not afraid to go on the internet and go to shop.truthatease.com. I'm not scared. I've taken out bowling balls that look like you. That's what I said. Straighten out. Get your conspiracy realist t-shirt. Don't make me come over there. You look good.
Welcome back. Thanks for listening to Truth or Talk. So hey, Virstyne, what's happening, girl?
Nothing. I've been wanting to interview him for a while, so I'm glad that we were able to get him on. And his book is really, really good. I really actually enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. Not that I thought I was going to like it, but you know how you kind of have expectations when you're reading a book, and then it takes you by surprise. So I didn't mention this in the interview or during the interview, but there's also a lot of poetry and quotes and it's a visually nice book too. Like the cover's nice, they're nice pictures inside. You know, he talks about his personal accounts of just, you know, his trauma, but it's not, you know, depressing. It's still very empowering, and it can, you know, be relatable to anybody, because I think, you know, at times in people's lives, everybody has felt, you know, isolated, and, you know, at least at one point, maybe some more than others, of course, but people feel isolated, or they feel alone, or they feel like unworthy, and I think this is a huge problem, not just with this instance of the HIV/AIDS, you know, myth, but also just life in general, how people are living their lives, you know, very disconnected, very out of touch with themselves, very sick, you know, not only physically, but like, you know, emotionally, psychologically. You know, people are, you know, prone to materialism, and I just started watching this documentary called The Century of Self. I haven't finished it, but have you seen it?
I haven't, but I've wanted to see it. A bunch of people have sent that to me.
Yeah, it keeps coming into my space, so I'm just like, I need to finally watch this. So, you know, it talks about like materialism and how people are very prone to, you know, or it talks about materialism and how basically it was started. And I never really like thought about like, oh yeah, there was a point in history, in time, where people just bought what they needed. But, you know, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Like, I'm going to the store to buy some potatoes and tomatoes because I'm hungry. Not now it's like, oh, I'm going to buy, like, you know, 10 dresses and another phone, and, you know, it makes people feel better about themselves. And even myself, I know, I've noticed when I get upset that, you know, even if I go buy food, I feel better that I don't need or something, you know, just spending money for, I don't know, it makes me feel better. And, well, for the moment, and then I realize, like, damn, I spent a lot of money, then I feel like shit. You know, but then you know, it creates this cycle where you want to go out and buy more. And, you know, while reading his book, I was looking at that documentary, and I was thinking how just what's the word? It's just convenient for people that are in the business of getting people to buy things to keep people in a state of depression and worthlessness and dependency. So they'll become more consumers. They'll become consumerists. Some consumerists, I guess I can say, consumers, you know.
And you notice, you feel like when you go into the store, sometimes you feel that, like, pull to buy things, or you feel kind of like drawn towards things sometimes that you don't really need. But you're like, oh, it's flashy, or it's got a pretty color.
Or the music's playing in the background, you know. Oh,
there's something that just like gets you in there and makes you want to buy it, or just even like picking things up that you don't even necessarily, you know, you don't need that, you know, or you're like, oh, maybe I need another one of these, and you also
another
notice too,
bobblehead, you know, like
and you also notice like other like stuff really sucks. Like things are so disposable now. It's like nothing really lasts that long. You know, furniture and all these things from IKEA and stuff, they're meant to only last a few years at the most. You know, before, like, you had old, I mean, Amish furniture last a lifetime. You make a dining room table, you'd only do that one time. And then sometimes you could even pass that down to your kids, and then they would never have to buy or make a dining room table. It was just like, generationally, this thing was just built to last. It would stay together. Yeah. But now, I mean, these things are disposable. It's like chairs break. You know, we have like dining room chairs, like our whole set of chairs have broken. I mean, it's just, that's weird, you know?
Yeah.
Just because the kids will like lean back in them and things like that. But this isn't, obviously they're not built to last if they're going to break that easily, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just, and so it's like meant to keep you coming back and buying more and more and more. And then we've also been robbed of our ability to make those things on our own. And then we're so busy and consumed that even if we have the desire to do it, we don't have the time. You know, it's like
and it's also too, and that kind of ties into like the whole notion what Damian was talking about with like self-healing, and you know, being independent, because it's also when you know how your body works. You know, and you know how, like, if you have a sore throat, you know how to heal it. You know, I mean, if you know how your body works and you recognize signs and symptoms, you wouldn't even get to the point where you get cancer or any really debilitating illness, because you'll be listening and in tune with your body and you'll be keeping it up. You know.
Yeah.
But the only time that you know, maybe I would suggest you probably need a doctor's for like a physical trauma. But other than that, as far as, you know, like healing diseases and illnesses, you know, you can do that on your own. And this is what people don't want you to know. This is what people don't want you to even believe. You know, they try and make you believe that, or try and make you lose faith in the fact that your body can heal. You were telling me, I think a few weeks ago, you had me rolling because you were like, you know, when you say that, people are like, oh, that's a conspiracy, you know, that the body can, like, heal itself.
Right.
It's so brainwashed and misdirected that we have to have vaccines to make us healthy. We have to have these pills to make us think straight and to feel good. And it's so funny, too. I saw a commercial a while ago talking about there's an epidemic of sleeplessness going on, and I'm like, really? Wouldn't people know? Like, why would you have to make a commercial? Like, telling people that they can't sleep. There's like a, you know?
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous, but there's some people that buy into that, you know? Like the restless leg syndrome shit. Remember that?
Well, that is real. I mean, we had Dr. Yolanda Lucer on our show, and she described what that is. That's actually a reaction to medication. It's the original, or the scientific word for it is akathisia, and it's basically like your bodies can't sit still, and you're shaking and you're jittery, and you have a lot of like.
Yeah,
it's true. It's a weird way to describe it. Restless leg syndrome.
Yeah, no,
it sounds.
You're right, but I mean, when they're making the commercial, they don't tell you that. They don't tell you it's generated by other medications. They don't. They're just marketing it as this like disease that came out of nowhere, and now like something's wrong with you. You know, they're not saying that they caused the disease.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? It's like I bet how many people, you know, how we're talking about going through the supermarket and being like drawn to certain products and we want to buy them and stuff. Like, how many people even feel that way about drugs, you know? It's almost like the commercials or even could be generating like hypochondria, where people are going,
I believe that for sure.
I feel that, you know, and I have that symptom. And just, it may be like one symptom out of, you know, 15 symptoms or whatever, but then they're going to go ask their doctor, and then they're going to tell their doctor, and the doctor, you know, they don't care. They're probably just listen to what you say, and they're, okay, fine, yeah, sure, you think you have that? Here you go. You know, and it's, I mean, most of the time, that's what doctors will be doing. They won't even care, and they won't even, you know, it's just, but I mean, I wonder that. That's really, really bizarre how somebody would have, you know, an interest in something like that, like drugs. You know, I'm just going to take drugs. That'll be...
well, because it's easy, and they think it's easy. They don't realize that it's going to lead to more complications. And you know, I think a lot of people also think of drugs and vaccines and all this stuff as part of our evolution, because they see it in a sense where, oh, things used to be harder back then. Now it's easy. All we have to do is just take a pill and everything's gone. Look how we've evolved. We're so smart, and science does everything for us now. We don't have to do shit. You know, that's kind of like mentality. And you know, I was talking to this lady one time, and she was talking about how she was epileptic, and she was a nurse, and she was really nice and open and stuff. And I was like, do you know what caused your epilepsy? She's like, no, I got diagnosed with it when, you know, after I was born, when I was a baby and stuff. And I was like, I was like, you need to look into vaccines. And I was telling her that could, you know, be a trigger for epilepsy. And she was just like, and then I was talking about vaccines and you know, giving her kind of the lowdown, because she was open. So we had a really like civilized, cool conversation about it. But then she was like, well, that's cool and everything. And I was like, yeah, you know, the body can heal itself, and you just need to, you know, eat healthy and make sure that you have, you know, sufficient amounts of water and vitamin A and D and C and all of that. And she was just like, yeah, but what about people that don't want to change their lifestyle and do that? What about people that just want to take a vaccine or pill because it's just easier for them? And I was just like, oh God, you know, like maybe one day she'll realize it, but that's the thing. That's never going to be a problem. So a lot of people think it's just a quick fix to problems, because science has made us evolve to the point where, things have become easier for us. We don't have to take responsibility. We don't have to make a lifestyle change, because when you start eating healthy and, you don't go to McDonald's, after that Little League game, you go home and grill some chicken, or you make a salad, something healthy, or you bring your food with you. It's a lifestyle change, really, that a lot of people don't want to.
It is a lifestyle change, and it's very hard too, and it can be, it can cause you to feel, socially awkward, and you have to tell people things, and then they think that you're lying, that you're not, they think you're told, like, people being allergic to gluten is kind of just a profiting scam, and there are people, I'm sure, that have taken that and profited on it, but, it's very real that people have celiac and are allergic to wheat, and that's a true problem, and wheat's pretty much a problem. It's pretty much disgusting food these days. You can't even get it organic, really.
It's funny, though, too, and I've noticed a lot of people that make comments like that, usually the ones that are most healthy. They're usually super overweight, have acne or psoriasis or bad rotting pit of stomach breath, or gastrointestinal problems, constipation, or their hair is falling out, or they're stressed all the time, or it's like I just look at them. No, I just look at them. I'm like, okay, because you're the walking epitome of health. That's why I'm gonna believe you. That's why I'm gonna believe you.
I know, right? It's true. You're right. That's usually the case. It's usually people that are just the walking epitome of health, and you're like, oh God. And then, they're really sick, and then they make fun of you for having that. But that isn't always the case. Like some people might look healthy because maybe, I don't know, they have a high metabolism, or so they stay thin, or they work out a lot, or they do these other things, but then they don't. Because I saw this lady at the grocery store, and she looked really fit and healthy, but in her cart it was like Wonder Bread, Gatorades, and and all this stuff, and I was going, wow, that looks really bad. Because usually people kind of look like their cart.
There was a point where I thought that stuff is really healthy. Because the Gatorade is marketed, it's electrolytes. You need your electrolytes. Right. Wonder Bread, it's enriched with vitamin B and 12 and niacin, and you know what I mean? Like, so it's all that, like, Weight Watchers and all that other processed food. Like, just people don't have a working knowledge. Really, what people need to do in order to stay healthy is to have a working knowledge of how the body works, and to become in tune with their bodies.
Yeah.
It's
one side doesn't fit all, and that is true. And I think that there's there's other things going on in certain areas of people's bodies that are having mutations and variants and things like that make it intolerable for certain things, and then other people might not have those mutations. But I think at this point everybody's pretty much mutated has certain mutations that cause certain problems, because it's really hard not to. It's like, if you've ever had a GMO, you might end up becoming allergic to the food that you ate with that was a GMO. So it's like, I don't know anybody who doesn't have some issue, who isn't like got some kind of gut issue or some kind of allergy issue or some kind of like skin thing growing, and it's like it's just. And no matter how healthy they are, it just seems to be, to just permeate. And so I don't really know what, it's just very obvious that our environment's highly, highly toxic. And then, and what Damian's talking about, with the HIV, and HIV isn't real, but then he still had to do some healing. And that was probably from the effects of the drugs that they were giving him for his HIV.
Or his lifestyle before, because in the book,
right, exactly.
In the book he was talking about how he did a lot of drugs, and and how he's an alcoholic. Alcohol's fun and everything, but it's hard on your liver. Some people are harder than others, and your kidneys. It's hard on your body, really. But, it directly attacks your liver, liver damage is associated with hepatitis B,
with also hepatitis.
Hepatitis. I'm sorry, you're right.
I was
just thinking of the shot, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's liver.
Hepatitis A is like when you've eaten something it's a bacterial infection that you get from like contaminated foods. And it's basically comes from animal feces, and then it gets on your food somehow, and then you eat it. And then hepatitis B is a sexually transmitted disease. So they say hepatitis C is fraud, just like HIV. So that's why I went through the line there, because I wanted to point that fact out. Hepatitis is a fraud. So what happens is the liver gets damaged, and then from various reasons, and they go, well, it's sort of like hepatitis, but it's not hepatitis A, it's not hepatitis B, so they just went ahead and named it hepatitis C. Even though they're, right, I know. And then they'll say, well, there's, and so how they test for it is the same sort of fraudulent testing system, where they can pick up certain proteins, they can pick up certain antibodies, they can pick things up, but they don't necessarily mean jack shit. And, and I shouldn't say that entirely, because it's not entirely true. There could be something there, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not a retrovirus per se. I mean, and you might have viruses, you might have other kinds of bacteria in your body, but what they're picking up is just like, basically they can take this testing system. What I've figured out recently is that they can take this testing system and just say whatever they want, and then find it.
How so, April?
Well, because you just have proteins in your body. Everybody does. And they might not be unique to any particular type of virus. They may or may not have anything to do with it. And so what they're using this testing system to do is either come up with a negative or a positive based on whatever outcome is most desirable to them, whatever, medical industrial complex. And then but because they know it's a fraud, then they can easily, reel back as soon as they get caught and go, yeah, it's a false positive or it's a false negative, And that, like they do with the HIV, if they get caught in court, they always say, oh yeah, sorry, it was false negative. They never outright come out and say, well, the whole testing system is a fraud. We can't actually detect a virus at all. What they say is that, well, it was a false negative.
Yeah, which I was shocked because
false positive.
I was shocked to find that out, because if you go look up HIV on the internet, or you even go to the HIV denialist page, and one of the things that they have is a picture of a retrovirus, of a retrovirus, but they say it's the HIV virus. So they're like, look at this picture. These denialists are crazy, because obviously this is an electron microscopic picture of the HIV virus. So I don't know what they're talking about, but it's not the HIV virus. It's a picture of a retrovirus. All retroviruses look like that, but they're just saying that HIV is a retrovirus. Nobody's actually seen it, because you can't take a blood test of somebody, put the blood under a microscope, and look at the blood under a microscope and see an HIV virus. They don't test like that, which is what I thought. And I think this is how most people think they test. Well, because they test for other viruses and bacteria like that. Why wouldn't they do that? But no, they test your blood to see if you have proteins that HIV is supposed to leave behind, but nobody's seen it. Yeah. But if you, I think Liam in his book Official Stories gives a really good breakdown about how the, I think it was Gallo, how he used umbilical cord cells for that leave this enzyme behind called RT, or reverse transcriptase, and what they really look for is to see if you have that it can be caused by anything, Anyway, I don't want to bog people down with the science. We talked a little bit about that in the intro, but I just I encourage people to please go and do look at the science behind why HIV is not real, and don't take our word for it.
Right. And that doesn't mean to say that there aren't real sicknesses, and I think that's where people get confused, because they go, well, HIV must be real because we see people getting sick.
Yeah, they're like, what did my sister die of, or what did my brother die of, or my mother, or whatever, my friend.
And the truth is that they probably did have some health problems. They probably did have some illnesses, and then they went ahead and started taking the drugs, and then the drugs basically kill them.
Accelerated
it. But then, and so then what we're told is that, well, HIV is, it's not the HIV virus that actually kills you, it's actually the things that you contract after you have it, because it attacks the immune system. This is the official narrative. It attacks the immune system, and therefore
your immune system can't fight off the...
You can't fight off infection.
Yeah.
But the truth is that, they don't really know what they're detecting. They're calling it that, but they actually don't know. And originally it was called AIDS, which is acquired immune deficiency syndrome. So that means you've acquired it. You have not contracted it. You guys get the difference? It's subtle, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's the clue there, because AIDS is real, and we do acquire immune deficiencies, and everybody out there that's saying that they got these problems has AIDS. Okay, Crohn's, lupus, fibromyalgia, all those people have AIDS. It's just not caused by the HIV virus, or and then they're trying to put it into other viruses and things like that. But like I said, they use the same testing system, so it may not be real. You can't just take their word for it and back what they're saying. And there's all kinds of other viruses that are out there that they don't even bother to ever look at. Okay. Those things aren't even being looked at, right? And so, I mean, I was on a wild goose chase the other day looking for something pertaining to rubella. Our friend Patrick Jordan, he runs this, he was on our show a couple months back, and he runs the site Vaccine Fraud, and he does this listserv on email, because he doesn't have high-speed internet. He's still on dial-up, so he doesn't do Facebook or any of that stuff. He's just on his basic email, and so he sends out this listserv. And so he sent me on a search for rubella, as the endogenous virus, which is a retrovirus, and to see if there was any kind of connection with that. And so I started looking into it, and what I found was that I couldn't find anything on rubella, but I found that the MMR vaccine had actually been contaminated with an endogenous called the avian leucus virus, ALV. And what's that? It's a chicken flu, all right, So this is a flu that's known to cause cancer, and it's in the MMR vaccine. And so what they did was it was contaminated vaccine that they gave to all these people, and then once they found out that it was contaminated, they didn't pull the vaccines that were contaminated. Because why? They tested they did a control study, and they tested some of the people who had received it, and they did not come up positive for ALV. Well, what kind of testing system did they use? The same one they used for HIV, the same one they use for all these other viruses that they claim people have. So it's a fraud. And so they can pick up whatever. This is how I figured this out, because I was like, they can pick up yes or no if they want to. So obviously they don't want you to be positive for this because they gave it to you.
Yeah.
And so they're going to say, they're going to use that system because they know they can just, it can just pick up whatever they want. The outcome, however they put it in, is what they get out. And so they said that nobody had ALV, but it was in the vaccine. And and it's so funny reading all these scientists and everything. And I swear to God, they sound so not intelligent. It's really sad. They're going, oh, I'm so glad to report that I don't have to tell people to worry about this virus, even though they were injected with it. I'm like, oh my God, are you guys for real? And it's just,
they sound as smart as a Surgeon General.
It's just crazy. Yeah. It's just so crazy. And then they go on to talk about how all the other viruses that were put into vaccines, but then there's to this day there's no link, even though we know polio was contaminated with SV40. And we know SV40 causes cancer. There's no association between those who got polio and cancer, the polio vaccine and cancer. And then there's the simian retrovirus that was in the which one was that in? The Rotarix. That's off it. So that's a pig flu. And the reason that there's all these animal things, because that's how they make the vaccines. They cultivate the viruses that they're trying to immunize against in animal cells. Animal cells. Yeah. And so then when the animal cells get contaminated, which they would, because
they can't separate them. They're
right. They can't separate them. So then they when they test them, they always find a contamination. So I just think that they're all contaminated. I don't think that there's a one that isn't, because I don't know how they cannot be. Because we know that these animals have all these things, and we don't always. I mean, in the world, we don't necessarily acquire them because we're not trading fluids with animals unless we eat them.
Unless they're being injected into us.
Well, I mean, unless we eat them, yeah. In which case we don't eat them raw. We cook them. We cook all that stuff out, and then even if we do come into contact with it, it goes through our immune process, and we eliminate it. But when we get injected, we don't. It doesn't go through that same process, and then it's raw. It's like right in there. So you can just basically assume, like I used to back in the day, I used to say, no, vaccines aren't contaminated because even the ingredients that they tell you about are bad enough to cause autoimmunity. But now I'm wrong. I was wrong before because I can see that it's true. I used to think that was just like conspiracy talk, that people were trying to like grasp at straws. Oh, they're putting things in there. I don't know if they're directly doing it on purpose or if they're just that incompetent or they just know, but there is some people out there that think that, they're trying to mix the species and do all that kind of weird stuff because there's stuff in like the Bible and things that talks about it, and I don't know, whatever, but it's
well, they're doing it regardless, whether it's in the Bible or not.
But it's happening.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a biblical prophecy. I don't know, but it's certainly in there, and there's plenty of evidence to show it. And so and I'll put that in the write-up in case you guys
are like, I don't believe it. That's pseudoscience talk.
That's pseudoscience talk. Yeah, in case anyone
lies.
In case anyone out there still believes that, then I will gladly show you the links that give you a listing of all that, and then so that's it just leaves a whole can of worms open for all kinds of infections when we're just allowing prion infections, like all kinds of weird stuff, and a lot of people think that that's what Lyme's disease is too. In fact, there's a whole argument out there that HIV was originally Lyme's disease. They actually knew that it was, and then that was all covered up. So, I mean, there's a lot to this. We'd have to do a whole other show on it, but because it's quite extensive. But I don't really know enough to speak on it.
Yeah.
But that's out there. So, but anyway, I guess we're just about out of time here. So we want to go ahead and thank Damian Laster for being on our show today. Can you give his website again, Virstyne?
It's Conscious Doctor, so it's the word conscious and then dr.com.
Perfect.
Yeah, so spell it that way, not like, don't spell doctor fill out, just consciousdoctor.com. consciousdr.com.
Yeah, and so he's really great. So we want to thank him for being on our show today, and to the rest of you, peace, truth, and love, y'all.
Peace, truth, and love, you guys. Bye-bye.